Well, welcome all. Welcome everyone to our regular council meeting. It is the 22nd meeting of the 142nd Council of the Corporation of the City of St. Thomas. And we welcome you all here today, and happy Father's Day yesterday. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first order of business is an Indigenous land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we meet is the traditional territory of Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, and Adirondacks Neutral and Mississauga peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Munsee Delaware Nation, Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, and Oneida Nation of the Thames. This land was settled through Treaty 2, the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we as beneficiaries of the treaty recognize our collective responsibilities to the land and water.
Sorry, I heard myself. Any disclosures of interest from any of the members? Seeing none, on to the minutes.
Your Worship, I have a motion that the minutes of the meetings held on June the 13th, 2022 be confirmed. Moved by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Wookie.
Questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
Council will now resolve itself into committee of the whole to deal with the following business. First order of business, strategic direction and development. First item relates to the City of St. Thomas strategic plan update in June of 2022. I have a motion that report ADM 2222 relating to the City of St. Thomas strategic plan update be received for information. Moved by Councillor Burgess, seconded by Councillor Wookie.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. City Manager, do you have part of this report?
Through Your Worship, I'm happy to speak to it if there's any questions to it. It does provide an overview of the activities. As a council, you certainly took quite a number of steps to identify your priorities, and we have been moving forward. You'll notice in I guess the third document, which is the spreadsheet, we are making some movement on some of the projects that still had not moved forward as quickly as the others, but there are many projects that are either at completion or near completion. So we're very pleased about that.
Well, thank you. And I wanted to share with the people at home. We set about 2 years ago about moving forward with a strategic plan of items that this council felt the City of St. Thomas and this council needed to move forward on. And I thank you, City Manager, for sharing with us where we're at, that we are seeing completion of some of the plans, active activity in others, and some that will carry over to the next council, as we knew they would when we first started. Thank you. Councillor Reimel.
I just had a comment under the thriving community. I didn't see anything in the description about the animal shelter.
City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council. That's right. It was missing, although there was an indication in the document that we are moving forward, and clearly based on the work that has been happening in our environmental services area and with the contribution of stakeholders in the community, not just a large donation, but other donations as well. We are planning for the 2023 establishment and opening of that center. And as you know, we have drawings being worked on at this point in time. So sorry about that. It was not intended to be missed. It was just wanted to highlight some other things as well. So sorry about that.
Anything else from council? All right, thank you. Moving on to urban design.
Next item relates to the phase 1 report for urban design guidelines for the City of St. Thomas. I have a motion that report PD 3922 relating to the phase 1 report be received for information. And further, the council received the report from Dillon Consulting titled Phase 1 Background Review and Visioning Report dated June 1st, 2022, and authorized the initiation of phase 2 of the study. Moved by Councillor Reimel, seconded by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Councillor Wookie, then Councillor Baldwin Sands.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I read this with great interest, and you know, it warms my heart to see the place making human scale, safe, attractive green streetscapes. I was also taking a look at the Parks Master Plan. It's very interesting how those two things kind of work together, or might not if you're not careful. And one thing that we're blessed with in St. Thomas is about 5 hectares of parkland per 1,000 people. And as the master plan says, there are communities that struggle to get 2 to 3 hectares per 1,000 people. And the conclusion of the master plan for parks was to say that we'd like to maintain it at 4. In my mind, I'd like to maintain it at 5 going forward. So I'm hoping that as this moves on, that between parks and planning, we can really integrate that parks master plan, because I care a lot about this, and that's certainly my vision. And I love the fact that there's a number on it, because we can measure that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wookie. Councillor Baldwin Sands.
Thank you. I would like to thank Councillor Wookie for bringing up what is measured there, because what is measured does get done. I only have 4 small little comments about the language in the report. I would have liked to have seen more references to climate change, the active, healthy, sustainable community initiatives that they talked about a great deal in the report, but it was not referenced as well as the active, healthy, sustainable communities initiatives. Also, the connected active trail system. We pride ourselves on that. And when people are looking at our community, and the only tool that they have to see our community is the website, to be able to say that we have a connected active trail system and where we're at with our strategic plan with it. So again, going back to that healthy, sustainable, active communities initiatives, it's one of the things every time we have the Discovery Week with the doctors, that's always the question that is asked, because I understand it's a question that they also are asked in their first year of medical study. So that is something that I would really like to see more and more of, that type of language in the report. And the last thing, there was many references made to some of our more sustainable building programs, et cetera. But using phrases like extended producer responsibility when it comes to some of the materials that, et cetera, that are used would also complement the language around climate change and climate change, working on some of the strategies around reducing the effects of climate change in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin Sands. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff. Something that I'd hope in the report would touch on is maybe how to break up the whole Talbot Street scape to maybe smaller units. It's such a long street, and because of the railroad history that we've had, we've got Center Street, Talbot Street, and then Keynes and Scott Street. And whether or not there's some design principles that could create more small neighborhood or civic squares and make use of the parking lots that we have at the back to create, you know, kind of squares instead of just, we're so linear. And so I just hope that some of those ideas might be part of the design principles as it goes forward. Keep that in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Mr. Pompili, or should I ask Mr. McComb about that type of question?
Thank you, Your Worship. I can attempt that. There's been a couple of comments from councillors with respect to areas of urban design or design in general that do touch upon other departments and design guidelines they may have, including the streetscape, which is part of environmental services. They have designs for that. And also parks. And it is the intent of staff. We've already had discussions with a consultant on this, that at the end of the day, this document will recognize those others. We don't want to step on the toes of some of those other designs, but we certainly will be working with the other departments to see how we can best integrate this document with those existing design principles that may be aligned in their documents. So we are keeping that into account. I appreciate Councillor Baldwin Sands' comments, and we'll be passing this all to the consultant as we move forward into stage 2.
And just supplementary, is there any discussion in the other cities that you looked at in terms of whether or not whether our bylaw of having the 2 to 3 stories ends up hampering what we might want to do in the future? I know it's preferred because you're trying to preserve a lot of heritage buildings, but we've got a couple blocks that I can think of where it's almost to the point where do you tear down and start over? I'm thinking similar to Budweiser Gardens, where they created some facades that looked like the original, but they just couldn't save it. And so whether or not you get into a situation where going forward, we might have a particular block that we might do something totally different. And does I guess the question is, when do we have that kind of conversation, or is it a case by case basis?
Mr. McCune, you try that one?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Through you, Councillor Clark. That is certainly part of the discussion we're having with the consultants. Some of the principles in our bylaw with respect to the control of building heights, especially right at the street front, is an effort to try to control the scale of development at that street front, and recognizing that we have designated much of the downtown area as a heritage conservation district. And so a lot of that comes from the principles that were established in the HCD, which have also been given to the consultants working on this project. So they're quite well aware of what those HCD guidelines say. And yeah, I mean, it could be that limits on height may have an impact on proposed development or say redevelopment of some of these sites. But the goal through having the height limits at the streetscape is that if you want to go higher, you just get stepped back. So the scale of the street front is kept to something consistent with the balance of the street. And yet perhaps you can step back and go higher from there. So but these are all principles, and I appreciate council raising these things. They are principles that we are discussing with the consultant, and we'll continue to have discussions on these as we go forward.
Thank you. Councillor Peters, did you have a comment? Then Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
Thanks very much, Worship. And I just want to say thanks to staff and the consultants for this. It's a great step, and it's going to be an important document going forward. And I know the Heritage Committee looks forward to its opportunity to review what has been come out of phase 1. And I know we'll be coming back certainly with some future comments in its regard. I just ultimately, though, want to make sure that this has strength and teeth to it. I can think of 2 developments, one going on as we speak on Curtis Street of a 4-story apartment going up in the middle of 1 and 1.5 story homes. It's totally, in my mind, inappropriate, but it was approved by site plan. A 6-plex that's going to go up, be constructed on Erie Street in a whole neighborhood of predominantly single family 1-story homes. It's going to end up being 3 stories high. And this is what I hope, is that this can be a document that has teeth that the developers are going to follow. And that we can preserve our neighborhoods. We're seeing, another development that's taking place at the corner of Walnut and Stanley Street, where our natural, it's not only the heritage environment that's being destroyed and the impact of that development it's going to have on the neighborhood, but it's natural heritage too, the number of trees that are going to come down as a result of this redevelopment. And so as I say, my hope is that this has the strength and the teeth that it is going to help give us better neighborhoods down the road and an appropriate infill into neighborhoods, and not just infill for the sake of infill, but infill to make a neighborhood a better place. So look forward to further discussions and seeing phase 2. But thanks again for initiating this, Lou and Jim.
Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
Thank you. Councillor Peters brings up all of my points exactly. And my last question was going to be, because this is an update from 2003, that this document is going to be on the city website, so that people who are, again, not just looking at the city to relocate here, but developers, et cetera, can come and actually see the city map and where our priorities lie, and make sure that we focus on those priorities. Is the document going to head to the website when this is done?
Mr. Pompili?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councilor's question. Yes, absolutely. This document, as we progress through the stages, these documents will be uploaded to our website. That's one of our opportunities for us to gather some input and some feedback from members of the public. But the final document absolutely will be, and it'll be something that'll be shared with the development industry, and anybody making sort of any type of investment in the community. We'll be directing them to these guidelines so that they can have proper consideration when they're planning something.
Mr. Pompili, before you go, I know you and I talked about design guidelines probably 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, or when you first joined us here in St. Thomas. And we said, this is a really important document to us. We don't necessarily have one so that things will flow in the right point. My question of you though is, will the document get in the way of any of the stuff we're trying to do from a housing point of view?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. Through that's always the challenge. And it's a document that I think will lay out at the onset what the municipality's expectations are.
Right.
Expectations for development and for the built form and for the fit in that community. And that's one of the best tools that we can give to any proponent is to say, this is your starting point, start here, and then the discussion will move from there. So I believe if that's taken seriously and we provide that tool to proponents, that we should avoid some conflict going forward.
Thank you very, very much. Questions or comments further from council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Great start. Let's keep going.
Next item, your worship, relates to the St. Thomas-Elgin 10-year housing and homelessness plan relating to the 2021 progress report and Built for Zero Canada update. I have a motion that report SESS 0822 relating to the 2021 progress report and the Built for Zero update be received for information. Moved by Councillor Baldwin-Sands, seconded by Councillor Burgess.
Questions or comments? Councillor Clark?
Thank you. My question was just that a great report, and I think we're making a lot of progress in this area. It's certainly been a highlight for the last 3.5 years in our strategic priorities. I really like the work that we're doing with Indwell. So my question is just whether or not we've had any recent conversations with them and whether or not they're interested in further development in St. Thomas.
Danielle, great to have you here. Great question for you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Council. It's a pleasure to be here in person with you this evening. And thank you, Councillor, for your question related to the work with Indwell, which is ongoing and conversations are steady. I can share that Indwell has expressed an interest in continuing its work with St. Thomas, and that work requires significant and thoughtful undertaking in terms of making decisions about how we progress forward in that area. But yes, the conversations do continue.
Councillor Clark, if I can share, Indwell was in town last week with a number of people from another community who wanted to see what we've been doing and how it was working. And we're great meeting with them, and it was a great conversation about the different things that they run into in different communities. And it was quite informative to have Indwell there speaking with two different communities at the same time. Councillor Peters.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. One of the things that really concerns me, Danielle, is to the north of me, I have a fourplex. I'd call it a renoviction of watching a tenant, a unit go vacant. Landlord does some work. The rent goes from $1,200 or $600 to $1,200 a month in 3 months. And, the work that was done is minor. And, a house a threeplex 2 doors to the south of me. I just became aware today that one of the tenants has been told, who's paying about $650 a month, that the landlord's decided that we're going to renovate the building and you've got to go find a place to live. And how that individual, how he is going to find a place in the $650 range is beyond me. So when it comes to, you talk at point 2 about providing the supports to keep people in sustainable housing that they currently have. They currently have sustainable housing, but they're going to have to move because the landlord is renovating and it's not going to be sustainable for this individual. So how do we deal with that? Is this a rent supplement issue potentially that this individual could tap into? Because there's no way he's going to find a place for the same rent that he is currently paying.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. That's an excellent question and point that you make. And this is an occurrence that we're seeing in our community regularly, like other communities across Canada. I won't deny that it's an exceptional challenge. Homeowners who are acting as landlords are working within regulations provided to them related to what their rights are. And often they're crossing those T's and dotting those I's before they're moving forward with what you refer to as a renoviction. What we're encouraging our community to do is to reach out as soon as possible, not only to experts who can provide legal advice, but also to our social services office to see if there's any opportunity to get ahead of that. In situations that we're currently managing, similar to what you describe, if we're not able to prevent the renoviction, using your terminology again, to stop that from occurring, we will continue to support that household to move forward with their housing search and any supports that our office can attach as well. It's incredibly challenging though, so I appreciate your question.
Councillor Raimo, did you have a question?
Yes, I think the work you're doing is wonderful, and the Indwell has certainly helped. But I just have a concern when maybe it's just Facebook warriors, but people say, well, we're not doing anything. We need to do more. Like, how do we make sure we communicate to the community at large the great things that are happening and the things we actually are doing?
Thank you for that question. It's very much appreciated. And I'm pleased to be able to be with you this evening to use our annual progress report as part of the way that we begin to make sure that we share with council and with the public the great strides that are being made in our community related to housing stability and homelessness prevention. Sometimes I will say that the squeakier wheel tends to get the oil. And so we often hear about the challenges we're facing in our community, which I don't mean to undermine or suggest aren't real, but it's important for us to keep a lens on the incredible work that is happening. I have the pleasure of being in front of you on behalf of our community, but I reassure you that there are many, many hands working very, very hard to achieve what you see in this report on a daily basis, and there's no slowing them down and there's no stop to it in the near future.
Thank you. Councillor Herbert, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Worship, through to Danielle. It appears, my heart goes out to the people who rent for $600-700 and told they have to move. Is the key to raise the rent is 1, renovation, and 2, is there a limit? Like if he puts 2 doors on and a window, can he raise the rent, or does he have to have a specific amount of dollars spent on the renovation before he can raise the rent, which would cause eviction?
Ms. Nielsen, what details can you share with the councillor tonight on what it means?
I can share with you, Councillor Hubert, and thank you for your question, that there are minimum requirements, but I will share with you that my humble opinion is that they're too low.
Further questions or comments? On the report, Danielle, fantastic. And I think that if we can, as Councillor Raimo suggested, I think there's sometimes we don't blow our horn well enough as to what we're doing on on covering the steps of homelessness in St. Thomas. We love what we're doing together with Indwell. But before that even happened, we always had a great housing department that had some geared to income housing, some rent subsidy money, and a bunch of other things that we do extremely well in our community, including the private sector. There's a couple of good co-op housing units. There's things that work on this all the time. I like Councillor Rimel's idea. I think we should be saying more of this out there too. Councillor Peters.
Well, thanks, Your Worship. And just to build on that, I think the other horn that needs to be shouted is the work that the city is doing. And that the city has stepped up to the plate. And quite honestly, our federal government and provincial government are missing in action, and doesn't matter what political stripe it is. We heard a federal election campaign. We've just gone through a provincial election campaign. They all talk about housing. And, you know, we're the ones that have come to the table. And I just, as we had the discussion about portables at schools, I think we need to have the discussion with our new MPP about, okay, you campaigned on this, that housing is going to be a priority. We need these strategic investments made in our community so that the onus isn't just on the city to be providing this housing that is, we all know, much needed.
Well, thank you, Councillor Peters, and in no way attempt to correct you, but most of the housing we've done with Indwell and others in our community came with a great deal of provincial money, and will continue to, we hope. But you're right, we have a new member of provincial parliament and some new ministry joining us. And last week we talked about what we might talk about at AMO with those ministers, and certainly housing and housing dollars is one for sure. So thank you, and we'll go back to the feds too. Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
Thank you. Last Monday, myself and other members of council attended one of the symposiums that was mentioned in your report. And to bring to the fold that we have not done this alone, that we have partners that are involved. I was wondering if the director could give us an idea of who some of those partners are, because it's not just us that are doing this alone. As the mayor brought up, it is others in the community that are working with the city. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, Ms. Nielsen, by all means, please share. I mean, this has been a group effort on moving some of this forward. And it's not just Indwell, although some of the biggest projects have been them. Please.
Thank you very much for the question. And I would like to start by saying that answering the question is my pleasure, but I run the risk of forgetting someone. So I just want to say to the public and to council that if I do, it's by no means a measure of how much I appreciate everyone's help. We work with many partners. This symposium, for example, that Councillor Baldwin-Sands is suggesting was put on by one of our longstanding and committing partners through Elgin YWCA. We also work quite closely with the Canadian Mental Health Association, which has recently merged with Addiction Services in Thames Valley and now has a very new long name that I'm not going to attempt. We work very closely with our friends at Indwell and at the Inn, and with a number of other partners who are regularly at the table that might be smaller, more granular in scale. For example, the Grace Cafe and the Nameless. And aside from organizations that are helping us in this work, are incredible, interested, compassionate, and invested community members that care and regularly will inquire about different ways that they can help. A lot of that also comes together through committee work, and it would be difficult for me to even begin to list them all for you, and certainly who attends those meetings, but it is quite a community undertaking that gets us the results that you see in this report. Thank you for the question.
Another follow-up, Councillor Baldwin-Sands?
No, if I could just piggyback that, the volunteers, the donators, and the constant faith groups that are always donating their time and their energy into these projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kohler.
Thanks, Your Worship. I won't go over everything that everybody else has already mentioned, but I think it's important, as Councillor Baldwin-Sands to point out the partners in here, and maybe in a future report, we can, because I know it's hard to stand there and list everybody because there's many, like even when we talk about Indwell, there's partners within Indwell that help them do what they're doing. And I think it's important that we recognize these people. So maybe in a future report, we do that and then find how we can, because it's important to continue to work that we're doing and especially to get it recognized out there. I think it helps to promote and recognize the people that are partnering in all these areas.
Further questions or comments from council? Seeing none on the report, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Great work.
Your worship, unless there are any further items for strategic direction and development.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, worship. Just a reminder through you to our city manager and Jeff Bray and his staff that we recently passed a bylaw unanimously regarding accessible playgrounds. And so further to Councillor Peters' question and concerns about the new playground having swings, I want to just remind staff that as they have discussions with and plan for the new park adjacent to the library, that we remind our commitment, the commitment we made about accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Further items? Seeing none.
We'll now move into community engagement and services. Nothing on the agenda at this time unless there are any items from the members. Your worship, seeing none, we'll now move into infrastructure and civic operations. Nothing on the agenda at this time unless there are any items from the members.
Seeing none.
We'll now move into corporate governance and administration. Your worship, also nothing on the agenda at this time unless there are any items from the members.
Seeing none.
Council will now reconvene into regular session. I have a motion that the recommendations, directions, and actions of council and committee of the whole, as recorded in the minutes of this date, be confirmed, ratified, and adopted. Moved by Councillor Rymel, seconded by Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
We'll now move into reports of committees. First committee report this evening relates to a heritage alteration permit for 300 Talbot Street. I have a motion that report MHC 1122 relating to the heritage alteration permit for 300 Talbot Street be received for information, and further the council issue a heritage alteration permit for the property at 300 Talbot Street relating to application HAP 0922. Moved by Councillor Rymel, seconded by Councillor Wookie.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Next report relates to a heritage alteration permit for the property at 244 to 248 Talbot Street. I have a motion that report MHC 1222 relating to the report be received for information, and further the council issue a heritage alteration permit for the property at 244 to 248 Talbot Street relating to application HAP 1022, provided that construction of the addition is substantially in accordance with the plans accompanying the subject application, understanding that there may be minor and or technical revisions made at the site plan control approval stage. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Rymel.
Questions or comments on the report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next report, also from the Heritage Committee, relates to a request for an amendment to the Waterworks Park designation bylaw. And that's relating to the development for the hospice. I have a motion that report MHC 1322 relating to the request for an amendment to the Waterworks Park designation bylaw for the Hospice of Elgin development be received for information. And further, the council direct administration to prepare a bylaw for its consideration to amend bylaw 152-2006, a bylaw to designate Waterworks Park at 2 South Edgeware Road in the city as a property of cultural heritage value or interest as set out in report MHC 1322. Moved by Councillor Burgess, seconded by Councillor Wookie.
Discussion or comments? I think this one is owed a bit of an explanation to those at home. We're talking about the land that we've designated for the hospice is truly attached to Waterworks Park, up on the hill, but attached to Waterworks Park. And so am I correct that this heritage alteration permit is simply saying that the land that we've decided to donate to the hospice is truly a piece of Waterworks Park, and that's why we're having this conversation tonight. I saw nods. Yeah, that's what the hall, okay, perfect. Just so we can explain to the people at home that we're not building in Waterworks Park. We've taken a piece up on the hill and kind of hived it off Waterworks Park and said, what a great place for the hospice. Next item. Or did we vote? We did vote? No, we need to vote. Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next report relates to mural art at 614 Talbot Street, the Transit Building, and 10 Princess Ave at the Inn. I have motion that report STPAC 0122 relating to the mural art be received for information. And further, the council approve the acquisition and installation of the mural art at 614 Talbot Street Transit Building as set out in report STPAC 0122. And further, that the mural art at 614 Talbot Street be included as part of the city's public art inventory. And further, the council approved the acquisition and installation of the mural art at 10 Princess Avenue as set out in report STPAC 0122. And further, that the mural art at 10 Princess Avenue be included as part of the city's public art inventory. Moved by Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments on the mural art? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
That concludes the items under reports. We now move into petitions and communications. The first item is a request made for a proclamation, flag raising, and jumbo lighting for Orange Shirt Day on September 30th, 2022. I have a motion that Council of the City of St. Thomas proclaim September 30th, 2022 as Orange Shirt Day in the City of St. Thomas, and further that the Orange Shirt Society flag be flown at City Hall on September 30th, 2022, and further that the Jumbo Monument be lit in orange color on September 30th, 2022. Moved by Councillor Baldwin-Sands, seconded by Councillor Burgess.
Questions or comments? Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
Thank you. I was very pleased to see this here because last week, in addition to Orange Shirt Day, I asked that the possibility of orange and white pedestrian crosswalk right at the corner of Talbot and Mount Damon be done at the same time before Orange Shirt Day on September 30th. So it is my hope that, and I will be looking for the staff report on this, that something can be done for the September 30th Orange Shirt Day flag raising event. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Next item is a letter of request from Murray Mugford requesting curbside waste collection at 77 Princess Avenue.
Councillor Kohler.
Thanks. Thanks, Your Worship. I was wondering if we could send this to staff for a report and come back.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. I think that's a good idea.
Sorry, Your Worship, I have Councillor Kohler motion to refer it to environmental, seconded by Councillor Peters.
All right. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
Your Worship, no further items under petitions and communications. Next order of business is unfinished business. Unless there are any items from the members, we'll now move into new business. Nothing on the agenda at this time unless there are any items from the members.
I would like to remind the community of Airshow this weekend. Should be an excellent event for our community, but also, as was mentioned last week, let's ensure we tell our children and other visitors to our community, new visitors to our community, that there's an air show going on. It's a positive thing, but explain why there are airplanes in the air. And wish the air show for this year a great success and fantastic weather.
Your Worship, if there are no further items, we'll now move into bylaws. I have a motion that leave be granted to bring in the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Baldwin-Sands, seconded by Councillor Wookey.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
I have a motion by Counselor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Counselor Wookie, that the bylaws be now read a first time, referred to council and committee of the whole, and read a second time.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
First bylaw, please.
First bylaw is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on the 20th day of June, 2022.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Next bylaw, please.
Second bylaw is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix the seal of corporation to a certain agreement between the city and the Canadian Union of Public Employees and its local 841. This relates to a collective agreement expiring December 31st, 2024.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Next bylaw, please.
Third bylaw is a bylaw to amend bylaw 53-22, 2022, being a bylaw to establish and maintain clean and clear lands. This relates to natural gardens.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Fourth and final bylaw, Mr. Chair, is a bylaw to authorize mayor and clerk to execute and fix the seal of corporation to a certain agreement between the city and multi-board communications operating as start.ca. This relates to a municipal access agreement, assets in the city rights of way.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. I rise and report that the successful passing of 4 bylaws.
Great.
Your worship, at this time, I have a motion by Councillor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Councillor Wookie, that the report of council and committee of the whole on the 4 bylaws be received and adopted. The same be read a third time, engrossed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and numbered.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
No notices of motion or public notice this evening. There is a need to move into closed session. I have motion that this meeting be closed to deal with a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land, a proposed disposition of land, a labor relations matter, and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality. Moved by Councillor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Councillor Burgess.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We are in closed. Or will be shortly.